As much as I would love to spend the next 2.5 hours, if I could, reflecting on the amazing journey that the Hawks have put me and the rest of the Hawthorn fans through this year, being 0-5, 1-6, going on this incredible run to end up being, I think, off the top of my head, 13-3 for the rest of the year is just extraordinary. Throughout that time period, I think I should do that when Hawthorn's season comes to an end. And I think that we can actually put the beginning, the middle, and the end together and make one coherent story. So, I want to make this video about what can the Hawks do from here, because there is no other club in the finals that is gambling with house money. There is no downside if Hawthorn do anything good or anything bad. When you think about the fact that Sydney have been the best team for so long, that brings some pressure. The pressure on Ken Hinkley, could they waste another finals chance? Whilst there's probably not as much pressure on Geelong because of their recent success, still, top four, got to give yourself a chance. We gave a team like Melbourne some flack for dropping straight sets and these things, so that can apply to the Cats as well if they go down that path. GWS pretty much tanked that last game against the Bulldogs, if we're being honest. So if they don't do well this September, will that become a factor? Who knows? Brisbane, is Chris Fagan really going to lead this football club into another wasted opportunity? The Bulldogs themselves with Bevo, what happens there? And of course, Carlton, who were in a prelim last year, finished 8th, largely because Freo decided they didn't know how to play footy anymore. So in terms of pressure, there is legitimately zero on the Hawks. Now that is both a good and a bad thing. And I want to talk about both of those in this video. So, enjoy. So the easy reflection for how the season has gone is right there, finishing 7th on the ladder, of course, with a win-loss record of 14-9, 8-2 in their last 10, their percentage of 118.5, which from round 7, I believe, is a percentage jump of over 45, if you can believe that. I actually think it's past 50. And 6th in points for and points against. One of the more incredible stats, considering that Sydney did wipe the Hawks in that round 7 game, is Hawthorn conceded less points this year than Sydney did. That's nuts. That's genuinely crazy, considering how far they've gone. And the last 5 weeks, your form leading into the finals is super important. How do the Hawks stack up? Well, you can't really find better numbers than these, to be honest. They're the number 1 rated team, number 1 for goals per inside 50, number 1 for metres gained, number 1 for centre clearances, number 2 for inside 50s, number 2 for rebound 50 rate, number 2 for marks inside 50, and have committed the least amount of turnovers. Now, if you are a Hawthorn fan, you are loving that, and if you're somewhat pessimistic, which I'm becoming less and less so, now the Hawks are doing so well, basically the Hawks have only been able to play who they've played. So yes, the lack of quality opposition. I know the Giants are a quality opposition. I understand that. But when you finish your season against 17th and 18th, those numbers can be inflated. However, going into the Carlton game, we know how the day played out, but going into that Carlton game, after GWS had won in heartbreaking circumstances, 28 points up at three-quarter time, Hawthorn weren't favourite in that game. Finals were on the line. That really was the elimination final. And yes, Carlton had injuries, I know, but the Hawks wiped them. Wiped them. And they're the kind of hurdles that they've been able to erase. Now, when it comes to the game against the Bulldogs, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, the fact of the matter is that Sam Mitchell's rebuild strategy was better than anyone expected. Whether you were a Joey Montagna who thought the rebuild would take 10 years and Sam Mitchell would not be the coach when Hawthorn next played finals, whether you thought you were someone like a Damien Barrett who thought that it was a form of tanking when the Hawks got rid of Tom Mitchell and Jaeger O'Meara, and best tank job in history, I guess, or worst if you think about what tanking is. And this is also from a football club who, remember, unlike some other football clubs of the past, don't have superstars with early picks. Yes, Nick Watson looks like a star. Cam Mackenzie was awesome on the weekend. He was the 6th highest rated player on the ground, Cam Mackenzie. 23 disposals at 81% efficiency. But that hasn't been an out-of-the-ballpark hit. Denver Granger Barris didn't play. Josh Ward didn't play. The Hawks have been able to do this without the gluttony of elite picks that they've gotten right. And that is strategy. And every rebuild we've seen, effectively pretty much, you need to do one thing well. Right? When you think of Hawthorn 3 in a row, they relied on defense first and elite kicking from there. And we know what happened from there. Now, having the talent that they did helped. Duh, you need talent on a list. But still, you still need a plan. Now, when Clarko did that plan, it was clear defense was first. There were opportunities where the Hawks could lose by 50 points instead of 80 points, but Clarko would let the Hawks get smacked as long as it was leading to the right place. And they got there. Now, I'm not suggesting Sam Mitchell's going to have the exact same career as Clarko. In fact, he's going to better him in one category. Sam Mitchell's going to be the coach of the year, and Alistair Clarkson never was. A man who won 4 flags, played in 5 grand finals, 6 preliminary finals, and I think 11 years of finals. 07, 08, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18. Sorry, 10. Didn't win it once. Mitchell's going through this year for finishing 7th. I don't know why I find that so funny, but it kind of is. I'm not going to lie to you. But Sam Mitchell came in and went, bugger defense. North, want to learn how to defend. West Coast, start with defense. All these kinds of things. That's all you hear. We're going to work on ball movement. And for a lot of time throughout 2022, the back end, 2023 is a full season just about. And the start of 2024, it did not look great. And then it flipped. And you might be thinking, what flipped? And I would argue that not conceding turnover is a massive thing. The territory game is a massive thing. But like we've spoken about already in this video, ball movement is the number one thing. The amount of good kickers, but also good ball movers and work rate. Yes, Jack Scrimshaw's a beautiful kick. Jarmanimpi can be a beautiful kick. James Sicily kicks it like an arrow. Massimo D'Ambrosio, the Italian stallion who should be on the wing of the All-Australian team if they pick players in position. All those things are true. And yet, Hawthorn are able to get numbers in their back half because Nick Watson, Jack Ginnivan and Dylan Moore are able to work up. They're able to get numbers centre forward because of the work rate of a Connor McDonald and even Marby or Chol's ability to get up the ground. Cole Shadir's ability to get up the ground. And no argument for retiring champions early in the modern game is as prevalent as it is with Gunston and Bruce. Luke Bruce has kicked 20 goals this year. He's been the sub, 8 times? Getting Jack Gunston back. Do we really need a 32-year-old on our list? Said the Hawthorn fans. Yeah, we do. We did. What a help he's been. And again, you've got the rise of Cole Shadir, who's been extraordinary. Career best season from Connor McDonald. The improvement of Lloyd Meek. Jimmy Warple's ability to find the ball in space has been amazing. John Newcomb's second half of the year. Oh, incredible. It's been amazing. It really has. And that's how you get here. That's how we're here. Spread the love. If you work your ass off, someone's scoring. Who? Who gives a shit? It's effectively the attitude, and I love that. And this all happened, remember, when Will Day wasn't in the side. He's injured at the moment, and we'll talk about that as we keep working through. But this is just an extraordinary story. But the season isn't over. And they say the real season starts now. And considering that Carlton game was a massive tick, the big crowd's not going to matter. Dusty's 300th proved that. Danger game, and I don't care what you say, more media picked Richmond than Hawthorn in that game. Now, the Bulldogs aren't going to be as bad as Richmond are. I understand that. But still, the boxes, that the challenges, I should say, that were presented to the Hawks and the boxes that were laid out in front of them have been ticked. That's all you can ask for. There is one interesting aspect about the Bulldogs game, though. It's at night. And the Hawks haven't played that many night games. And then you think to yourself, ooh, but that means the ground could be dewy. And I watched the conditions for Collingwood v Melbourne. And will a tall team struggle with that? Well, maybe. The Bulldogs did have terrible conditions at GMHBA Stadium and wiped the floor with Geelong. So that might make you a little bit nervous. Until you remember that no team in the competition, you could argue, is in better form than the Hawks at the moment. Liam Jones will probably not be playing. And the Bulldogs aren't really great at shutting down Smalls. It's a really good matchup. So, the path to premiers, what does it look like? Well, it looks like that. The Dogs first up, locked in Friday night, 2 Fridays from now. If you're watching this, of course, after the first Friday, well, of course, then it'll be next Friday. But then the Hawks will take on the loser of Port Adelaide versus Geelong. And then from there, we'll probably take on the winner of Sydney and GWS. Well, not maybe, they just will. That's how that works. And then the grand final could be legitimately anyone. Anyone they want. Except for the Bulldogs, if they win, of course. And whoever loses the other elimination final. Brisbane v Carlton. But let's start with week 1. So the Bulldogs. Now, I'm scared for one reason, because I do think weather dependency is going to be key here. Matchups is going to be pretty key here too. Connor Nash is going to run with the Bond. I think that's just a fait accompli at the moment. And if the Hawks do need a second ruckman, it's probably going to be Weddle more than Nash, to be honest. Now, yes, the third tall forward for the Dogs is going to be a problem. Sam Darcy's in really good form. The conditions at Ballarat didn't suit him. And that's what I mean by we kind of need the conditions to suit the Hawks a little bit. And I kind of see the Hawks and the Dogs in the same ballpark. And that is winning the first final might be the most difficult of the bunch as you keep going through. If you break the first hurdle, you just become more dangerous. And I feel like that is the case. And of course, the last team to win it from outside the 4 was a Victorian team that finished 7th. Yes, please. So, the Dogs themselves, if they do win the game, it is going to be because of their ability with the ball. The interesting thing about this game is that I think these two teams are relatively even with the ball. But right now, I would probably say the Hawks are as good, if not better, without the footy. But I do wonder about that bombing in long. If you've got Scrimshaw or Weddle playing on a Sam Darcy, if we imagine that Frost goes to Jamara because of the pace, maybe. And if you imagine Sicily goes to Norton, although Sicily's shoulder is a little bit of a problem. If the Hawks do lose this elimination final, I think more Hawthorn fans are going to get behind the idea of getting Tom Barras to the club or a key defender. And considering how much they courted Sam Taylor earlier on in the season, the Hawks clearly know this is a problem. So conditions are going to suit us beautifully. And there's no really other team that we're going to run into that is going to have as prevalent a tall forward line as these. Yes, GWS Hogan is going to be a problem, but for some reason when we played them last, Sam Frost didn't play on Hogan. Seems a little bit strange, but I don't think their other tools are going to take the game away from us. Really? Jeremy Cameron's a star, as we know, but is Shannon Neal going to break a game open against the Hawks at the MCG in a final? I'm not sure. Dixon, Georgiades, Marshall, I know, but Marshall hasn't had a great year. Georgiades is in some really good form, but Dixon's a little bit older, and I think an interceptor could be, the way to go. I don't think a Scrimshaw or a Weddle would work on Dixon personally. I think Weddle and Georgiades is just an amazing matchup. Sicily goes to Marshall and Frost on Dixon is the way that I would run that if it gets that far. Would be pretty incredible. Sydney's talls, Logan McDonald, Joel Amati, and Hayden McLean, they are nowhere near as threatening as Darcy, Ugle-Hagan, and Norton are, in my opinion. And then if you get to the granny and you play the winner of Port Adelaide and Geelong, if all the permutations and machinations end up that way, well, we've already talked about them. And then if you play Brisbane, you've got Danaher and you've got Hipwood. Danaher was amazing in last year's grand final. And will Eric show up? I don't know. So, yeah, it's bias. I love the Hawks. But the only nightmare tall forward matchup is this one. Now, if it goes pear-shaped and the Hawks are out, I mean, that's a bit of a problem, as we know. But if they do manage to get through, I'd actually feel less anxious, I think, as they go through. Unless it got to probably prelim week and I won't have fingernails left, but that's probably a whole nother problem. But in terms of beating the Dogs, if the Hawks are at their best, I genuinely think they get this done. And if the conditions could help us out a little bit, that would be greatly appreciated. So for Port and Geelong, again, on the surface, the exposed form has Hawthorn pretty much over Geelong, who I know have beaten us twice this year. Cardinia Park is a skinnier ground, though, and Jeremy Cameron's not going to have the kind of day that he had against the Eagles, against the Hawks, I do not suspect. Now, Port Adelaide over there, The ground didn't bother us, but it was the only game tactically that Sam Mitchell just tried to be too clever and I think stuffed it up, as a video I did on the Port Adelaide game showed. But going over there, again, when you're playing with house money, you're so dangerous. And Hawthorn's first quarters lately have been really, really, really good. So if you silence the crowd early, get them a little bit anxious, will be golden. And when you think of what like Josh Rochelle did, now it's a joke what Adelaide have done to him. But in terms of getting under the crowd's skin, in terms of getting each other in the game, no one loves Hawthorn players more than Hawthorn players. So maybe instead of getting around the crowd early, it would be getting around each other. And then if you've got momentum, Guinea, Watson, geez, they're going to piss off some fans. They really are. And either of these two games would be amazing, probably for different reasons. Meeting Geelong would be anxiety-ridden. They always are against the Cats with the amazing finals that we have played in the past. 89, 08. I think they beat us in the 11 qualifying final. I don't really remember that game all that much, but the Isaac Smith after the siren in 2016 as well, the 2013 prelim, outside of a grand final, my favourite game of all time, even though I went to the 2012 prelim against the Crows, but that 2013 prelim breaking Kenneth's curse was just awesome, and of course since that time the Hawks have won 3 flags, the Cats have won 1, so they have a little bit to go. But would be really exciting, both of these games. I think Port would be a more mental game. The Cats game would be a more physical one. But either of those matchups would be pretty sick. Now, week 3, Sydney's going to be the hardest team to kind of scout here because they smacked the Hawks in round 7, as I've spoken about here. But GWS, as we know, both games have been really, really, really close. Now, if that game against the Giants would obviously be at NG Stadium, which neither of these two teams have played at this year, being Manuka Oval and Utah's being the two grounds that these two have played on against each other this year. I don't think the Hawks have won at Giant Stadium before, or NG Stadium, whatever the hell they're calling it at the moment. I'm still going with, was it Spotless? At some point, was that ground? I know it was Blacktown at some point. Anywho, GWS's home ground, Giant Stadium, NG Stadium, whatever. But again, it will probably be close. I can understand why people would pick the Giants. I completely get that. The Giants would go into the game favourites. I understand it. But you couldn't blame Hawthorn fans for going, well, it's 1-1 really close. Roll the dice, see what happens. But the Swans are the worry. They really are. Fully fit, they are. Any team with injuries are going to be easier to play against. And we don't hope for injuries around here at Daz Talks Footy. But Sydney would be the big worry. They really would. Just because of how good they've been as well. Like, come on. I know they had that slip up in the middle of the year, but they've been the best side by so far, it's not even close. But GWS in a prelim might be the way to go. And then in the grand final there, you've got the winner of Port Adelaide Geelong, so whichever one of those are probably coming up against a Brisbane, you would think, or the loser of Sydney GWS. So it could be any of the New South Wales teams there, but I've already spoken about them a little bit. So Hawthorn v Brisbane in the grand final. Believe it or not, I would hold really good levels of comfortability there. Is that arrogant? Am I just drinking the Kool-Aid of the Hawks? Probably, but as a Hawthorn fan, I think you'll allow me to do that. But I'm trying to think of ways that Brisbane could dominate the Hawks in that game, and I'm genuinely coming up with nothing. McInerney versus Meek would be a draw. Yes, you've got Lockie Neal. I understand that. Would the Hawks bring in Finn McGuinness and just try and shut him down as best he could? I wouldn't blame them for doing that, and fully fit, the Hawks could match them in a lot of areas. Their rebounding ability, I don't think Cam Rayner and Zach Bailey are great pressure forwards at all, so I think the Hawks would be able to move the ball out of defensive 50 in an amazing way. I think also when finals start, the experience of Bruce Gunston, these guys, is going to be so key. I know that's only a little bit of experience, but you only need a little bit of experience. Ask England in the 2005 Ashes, for crying out loud. They were young, they weren't scarred by previous defeats, they went in knowing nothing and beat the Aussies 2-1. Yes, Glenn McGrath rolled his ankle on a ball on the second test and England hit 400 in a day, but who gives a stuff? But Michael Kasperwich, I mean, come on. And then Billy Bowden. Okay, come on. Was it out? Really? Was it out? That's not the point, Daz. Get back to your original point. Okay, I will. Is it bad if I'm talking to myself and answering myself at the same time? Probably. Anywho, I just feel like with the Hawks going, stuff it, let's see what happens, is going to be a dangerous combination. But I think Sydney are my number one worry and the Bulldogs are number two. And matchups matter. They really do. In any sport, they just do. So, look, fingers crossed. Can the Hawks win the flag? Look, it's not impossible. If I was doing a power rankings of these finalists, Hawthorn would not be 7th. Let me put it that way. Should I do that as a video at some point? I already have 2 others planned, but maybe next week. We'll see how we go. It's extraordinary, though, that the fact that this side that was 0-5, 1-6, got a little bit of momentum. Oh, yeah, it's only Hawthorn, and then kept winning, and it was like, oh, here they come, maybe, are they? And then the receipts started coming out for the experts who had us in a bad place. I didn't have Hawthorn in my top 8 at the start of the year, but I will be doing a worst takes video because it's fun to laugh at yourself when you get things wrong, right? It's not that serious, guys. It's a fucking game. I love it, though, and it is my life. But still, we have fun here. That's why we're here. So, can the Hawks win the flag? Yes. Will they? Look, probably not, but it's been a fucking wild ride, and weirdly enough, I kind of relate this to 2007 Hawthorn, who, at the end of 2006, won their last 4 games. Hawthorn won 8 in 2022. 2007, made the finals, won a final, that extraordinary game against the Crows as well, where Buddy kicked his 7th with only seconds left on the clock. And if the Hawks can get some kind of finals experience there, could then lay the platform for 2025, in which Jack Gunston's going to go round again. Luke Bruce wants to go round again. The Hawks are going to hopefully get Tom Barras and Josh Battle, and are going to be able to attack 2025 with an aplomb that is extraordinary. So how do you think the Hawks are going to go for the remainder of the year? If they get over the Dogs, can you see them going all the way? Do you think they'll even get over the Bulldogs? Comment below, let me know. Click the like button so more people can watch it. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks footy family. I hope you had an amazing weekend. If your team is not playing finals, stick around though, because there's going to be plenty of trade and draft content to come. If your team is playing finals, well, of course, stick around and watch the wild ride that is the end of the season. So take care of yourselves, take care of each other, you absolute superstars, and I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Ciao.